Hello and welcome to The Wilderness of Creativity, a platform for creatives and aspiring entrepreneurs to share their stories of survival. I'm your host, Lucy, and I'm so excited to share this creative journey with you. Working full-time and raising a small human has caused me to lose track and wander off-piste on several occasions, but I followed the signs and here we are, surviving the wild and feeling more connected and inspired than ever before. Whether you're a seasoned adventurer or just starting out, I'm here to cheer you on as you navigate this journey. Together, we will uncover practical tips and strategies for cultivating creativity, explore different ways of prioritising our creative energy when there are people to please and deadlines to meet. And we'll also discuss how we can foster a mindset that inspires connection, innovation and play in our daily lives. Tune in every month to hear how my guests find focus in a world that never stops buzzing and discover what it really means to take the road less travelled. Subscribe now to listen to The Wilderness of Creativity and remember to like, share and leave a review to show your support. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram, so come and join in with our conversations. And that's it. Welcome to your next adventure. Welcome to this month's episode of The Wilderness of Creativity. This month we're shining a spotlight on the incredible work of Jo Cohn, dance artist, activist and artistic director of Doodle Dance. With a degree in dance and related arts from Chichester University, Jo has spent her 25-year career using her craft to bring people together and inspire positive change through play, creativity and movement. From local projects in West Sussex and Hampshire to national initiatives, Jo has worked tirelessly to share the joy of dance with everyone, from young people to adults, families, those with learning disabilities, and older adults living with dementia. In this episode, we discuss her remarkable journey from her early days as a freelance dance artist to her current work with Doodle Dance and the Primary School Dance Network. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode.
I managed to go off and do a few errands and then come back and done a little bit of slug finding at my allotment because my strawberries are very precious to me. Got lovely strawberries, but the slugs are rather enjoying them. So I went looking for slugs this morning. And
have you always gardened?
Well, it's been a big part of my life because my parents have always grown fruit and veg and gardened, and my granddad did. And then just after lockdown I got a allotment which is on our estate, and I literally go there and it's just lovely because I do a certain amount of gardening, and then I've also got a really nice bench that my dad built me and I do work down there, so that's really nice. And it's literally 2 minutes walk from my house. But my garden out here is a little bit of my it's just my sort of time off and my daydreaming and my wandering space. But I just love it as well because it's one of those things where you forget. I've literally got bulbs coming up at the minute and I've forgotten what they were, and it's like that. What's gonna come out?
The surprise.
Yeah, I think they are a certain flower that I'm hoping. So that's so it's been really nice. But it's not. I don't really have a typical day, to be honest, because of freelancing.
No, that's right. I tend to do a lot of my thinking in the car.
Oh, I love driving. I really like driving. I'm heading up to see Louise in a few weeks in Leicester, who I do the network with. Once I know a journey, if I've got a lot of where am I going, but when I'm on a kind of straight motorway, I actually really like driving because it just helps me to sort my thoughts out.
It's quite meditative, I think.
Yeah. Obviously, you have to concentrate on what you're doing.
You kind of get to where you're supposed to be going and you're like, how did I get here?
I know.
Do you want to tell us about the Primary School Dance Network?
Yes. So in COVID, I had a massive Arts Council funding bid just before COVID and was going to be developing my work that I do under the name of Doodle Dance, and sort of grow a team. And then COVID came along, and Louise Jaggard and I had, prior to COVID, really started communicating. We'd never met in person. We'd met in the Primary Dance Network, which she originally set up. And we then sort of took our conversation offline and started chatting on the phone. And we sort of used to joke and say she was sort of like the Midlands version of me and I was the sort of Southern version of her, because we had so many aligned values with our work. And weirdly, at times we'd like put a social media post up and it would be of like the same thing, like, you know, like the same sort of word text, or we were doing the same actions. So she went through a stage of like making sort of book packs to put in cafes, and the same week I did the same thing and we posted, and it was this real like alignment of
like really attuned to each other.
Oh, absolutely. We've always said, you know, if we live around the corner from each other, we would like be working together all the time. But we developed this like really strong sort of value-led practitioner relationship, and then it turned into, you know, friendship. And in COVID, I had this money to do this project, and a lot of it was about developing artists so that they could then come on board with Doodle Dance, and that was going to be like a real local thing. But you know, that it just, the plans couldn't happen. So I sort of spoke to Louise, and she spoke about creating a resource. So she brought Claire Pring into the conversation as well, and the three of us co-wrote a book together called Making a Move, and it was intended for dance artists and teachers who were still delivering. I was not being able to go to work due to my husband. He had cancer at the time, and so we were shielding. And the Arts Council were amazing. They just said yes, you know, change and adapt, like they did to many projects and freelancers. And so we wrote the book, and then it kind of evolved this sort of team ethos. And we said to Lou, how about us coming on board with the network? And I approached the Arts Council again and said, look, you know, we've got a group here and it's being used, but we'd really like to grow it and we'd really like to develop it and reach it out to not just artists, but to primary school teachers as well, and to really look at how it could be a space that could really, you know, advocate for primary school dance and really support people working out there. It can be quite isolating being freelance, but then it can also be isolating in primary schools if you're the person sort of doing the creative subject. I don't know if you find that, Lucy, but
I do. You know, I worked as a freelance artist for 5, maybe 6 years, and then as work sort of changed, the landscape changed, I went into to do my PGCE, and then I worked in secondary schools teaching dance and drama, and I've just made the transition into primary. And the reason why I set up Joining the Dots was because I felt so alone. I felt so isolated. I didn't have that tribe around me, because as you come out of your freelance work, you lose all those connections. And I'd moved around so much. So Joining the Dots, and then obviously finding Primary School Dance Network and finding yourselves, I started to feel like I had that team around me. And I'm sure a lot of the artists that are in that group feel exactly the same, because you share ideas, you share resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're really proud of what we've done there. But actually, you know, the pride for us is the contribution of the members. You know, a really big thing for me with the work that I do with Doodle Dance is, you know, I've kind of evolved the thought around the Primary Dance Network of like looking at other places and spaces I can create for artistic development. But the really important thing is that it's not ever about like duplicating, you know, the administrators. It's not about sort of duplicating each other's work. It's about developing the artistry of the individuals in that. And that includes the teachers as well. You know, I've noticed, and talking to other colleagues and especially talking to primary school teachers, there's been a massive reduction in CPD as well over the years. And what that does is it waters down the quality of practice going out there. So, you know, myself, Louise and Claire, we have been working quite a few years, you know, within creative dance. Sort of all of us are sort of around this sort of 20 to 25 year kind of thing of working. And, you know, you have to keep things fresh. You have to keep evolving. You have to keep moving your practice to what's happening in the world as well. And, you know, COVID was such a massive thing that none of us, I think, really ever thought we would live through. And the impact of it has really impacted the children we're working with as well. So, you know, for me, the network was also about connecting people really to the power of dance and the impact it can have on well-being, the impact it can have on the cross curriculum, the kind of supportive element for those kids who, you know, don't wish to sit still at a desk.
Absolutely.
Which is me, you know.
Something that comes across so beautifully is your passion, you know, for allowing children the space, the time to create, to move, to explore, to connect. And that's something that came through in our initial conversation. You know, you do believe that creativity is a fundamental right.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was brought up, so my sort of upbringing was in the 80s. I went on union marches. My dad was an activist. My parents both worked a lot with people who perhaps didn't have a strong voice. So they worked a lot with adults with learning disabilities and people who've been in criminal justice. So the kind of rights of a person was really fundamental to my upbringing. And then when I had children myself, in early years, there's so much play and there's so much creativity, and it's, you know, it's just seen part of what should be happening in nurseries. But when they moved to school, I was really saddened by the fact that I've always said to my children that whatever they don't get to do at school, we'll do at home. You know, we'll find other spaces and places. And I noticed as they went up through the year groups, I was having to provide more and more place for play and creativity and for unique expression. You know, simple things like now my daughter is going to high school and she is really gutted by the fact that she has been prescribed what type of pencil case she can, you know, have. Now some people look at that and think that's not a big deal, but when you're a young person, you know, that's really important. I used to love that, like going to Woolworths.
So
you know,
did I. And decorating them and like writing all over them and choosing it.
Exactly. And this unique expression, you know, I mean, Doodle's sort of mission is protecting childhood. You know, I see that joy, play, creativity, and I've also added in rest actually to that recently. You know, they are rights of childhood. They're rights of adulthood, but we are removing them from childhood. And, you know, that angers me. That is a massive motivation for my work. And like you said, and also giving permission to the adults in those spaces to have that as well. So many of the teachers really love the sessions because they're like, yeah, I've got to play. I've just got to be.
I love the concept of make your mark?
Yeah. Doodle Dance originally came out of another inspiration, my other daughter. So my first daughter was born with hip dysplasia. So she was in a full body plaster cast for quite a few months before the age of 1, and then had sort of series of operations and such. And so we would turn up to sessions and they were all very sort of like pre-prescribed franchise sessions that we would go along to. Now there's loads of space for that, you know, they're like, some of them are really amazing. They offer a really brilliant space for sort of physical and all the rest of it. But my daughter, being in a plaster class, she couldn't access all of it. So I designed a sort of inclusive community group, and then from the inclusive community group, I had a teacher come along. She was like, "Oh, we so need this in year R for mark making." And I was like, "Mark making? What's that?" And she said, "Oh, what are you doing?" She told me a little bit, and I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I can do that." So I went along to her primary school and did a 10-week project. And it was called the Magic Writing Wand or something like that, I think. This is going back to, my daughter's 14 now, so it'd be about 13 years ago. And so the project started with that, and then it was Make Your Mark, and this name Doodle Dance came out. So it started off, all of the work was focused towards mark making, which is, the starting stages of putting a crayon or a pencil or whatever onto paper. And, we then progress those marks, those scribbles, directional marks, into shape and form of letters and drawings. And so, but then it evolved. It's really evolved. I started pondering the question of, why are we asking these children to make these marks into this writing, and started thinking about, well, that's about sharing their ideas and their thoughts and their feelings and their imagination. But then I recognised, it's really important, reading and writing is a really important life skill, but not all children are going to achieve that. But that does not mean that they should be silenced. They still have their own expressive languages. So Doodle kind of expanded from, making marks. And I still run a lot of my work in schools is On Your Marks, which is with Year R, and it's all about developing the body to be strong and confident mark makers. But there's going to be loads of children within that who will want to express through dance and movement, and who will want to use sound, and who will be very physical and very big with their expression. And then there are the quiet, much stiller children. And it runs through all of the sort of work I do. So I want to make my mark, and I want the other artists who are working to be able to do it in their own unique way.
And you've got a team of artists now that work with you. It's not just you.
One of the things I did achieve with the Arts Council funding was I met a wonderful artist called Catherine. He works Horsham Way for Doodle now. We sort of, it's weird because I had thought at the end of this I would have a whole kind of like, we're going to be a CIC or we're going to be this, but we're still very much a collective of people, and Doodle Dance is an approach. It's kind of a piece of work as such. So we are independent freelancers, but we kind of work under this title of this piece of, work is Doodle Dance. And so Catherine came on board, and we had such a wonderful time together. I've got a really supportive school who I'm with annually, two terms every year, and they're really supporting me with other developments with Doodle. And they've said anytime I have artists who I want to sort of train up, I can use them as a sort of training school. So they've been really amazing.
Oh, wouldn't it be amazing if more schools did that?
Yeah, well, it's really interesting because one of their values is creativity.
There you go.
One of the things we were talking about, I noticed like in the questions you were going to perhaps be talking about today was, like good examples of sort of practice and how creativity, how it gets integrated into the school. And I've noticed a real difference in schools who have it as a value. And what I mean by that is it is one of their values. It's not like a sub-value, it's not like in the description. It is creativity is one of their key values. And that makes such a difference because I go in and I have such a freedom because of it. I have a permission to be in that space, and I go in and I deliver PE, but creativity is all the way through it, and they are always moving, and there is always physical education. I'm permitted to be really creative with that, which has been amazing. So Catherine came along and she did training with me whilst seeing the work in practice, which was a really great experience. And then Louise Jagged has been delivering Doodle Dance up in Leicestershire as well, which has been amazing. And that was really interesting because Louise is a very experienced artist. So what's been really interesting for me as a trainer is the way I've been able to approach the training has been very unique to the artist and has been very different. So I have been able to share the theory, share some of the ideas, some of the practice with Louise, but because she is so experienced, she's been able to place that on her own experience. She's been able to imagine and understand that through her own lived experience. Catherine is a lot newer to community and education practice, so she hadn't had as many meetings with children. So for her to be in the space with me and see the way that I was working, and then be in a school like it was, where there was this permission of, creativity. Yeah, it was a really, really great experience. So, my hope is eventually I would really like to find other artists slowly, which is kind of where Doodle is like moving towards, looking at how I share the ethos, the values of it, and then the theory, because a lot of the work is research on certain either neuroscience or anatomical kind of research. So yeah.
Hello, Lucy here, and I hope you're enjoying this month's episode. I'd love for you to help spread the word. There are several ways that you can do this. One, you can subscribe to the podcast on your favourite platform, which will ensure that you never miss an episode. Two, you could share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues who might be inspired by the stories that we're sharing. Three, your reviews and ratings are incredibly important. They help new listeners discover the podcast and they give me valuable feedback on how I can improve. So, if you've been enjoying today's episode, please take a moment to leave a review. Your support is what makes this possible. I'm on a mission to inspire, motivate and empower fellow creatives to take the road less travelled, and I am so grateful to have you along on this journey with me. Okay, let's get back to the episode.
I remember back when I was doing it, there were the dance agencies, there were a lot of organisations around that I could tap into, that I could network with. There seemed to be a lot more focus on building those networks, building those connections, and I just don't see that anymore. I might be wrong, maybe it's because I'm not within the freelance world anymore, but I just get a sense from kind of listening out in the conversations, it just feels very sparse.
Yeah, I think it's one of the biggest challenges. So when I left university, we had a dance officer for our whole county. We then had arts officers for every district. There was a lot of people who I could go to and who they were putting the funding bids in, they were putting they were the infrastructure, and then I could turn up and do this glorious thing that, I was sort of really enthused and passionate and skilled in. It has really, really changed. In the time I've worked, I've seen these circles go round. So I think we have to, I suppose, place some hope out there. There's a shift that is happening at the minute, and the hope is in that circle on the down, there's then the turning up. So I do think sadly art goes, but it does come back. But I think the biggest thing for me is, the isolation element is always going to be there if you don't go out. And that going out is finding other places. So not just dance places. It is wonderful when you find them because there's that kind of common language and that understanding. But I think the thing is to tune into your values. So I've just recently been social media stalking a local charity to us. They put this beautiful little film out, which was all to do with play, and they're a charity and they run a series of nurseries and kind of after school things. And I just started like listening to them, and I was like, these guys, they've got the values, you know, they seem this. And I just like said, hi, this is who I am. I'm at an age now where I really want to work in spaces where I want to work. Like I am more selective, I would say, with my work. I've had to sort of do that also. My body is aging, you know, like there's certain places and spaces like I haven't got the energy to fight as much perhaps, so I am going to places where the values are going to align, and I know my work is going to be appreciated, and I think the time will come when I'm a bit more refreshed, where I will go back fighting to spaces that like they don't know yet they need me, but they do need me, you know. But at the moment, you know, I'm having to really balance my well-being with the role of being mum and with finding these spaces to work. But I think it's really important that you reach out, you know, like, you know, networking, like finding your local arts centre, finding charities, organisations that align with your values and that also work with the people that you're trying to meet, but perhaps in a different way. I think, you know, creativity isn't just what we do in a session. It's like the whole way you run your practice.
And your approach to life, I think. Because creativity isn't just about what you're creating, like you say, in a session or for a performance. It's, you know, how we nurture those relationships. It's how we problem solve. It's how we find opportunities, create space, collaborate. It's such a big part of how we human.
Absolutely. And you were just talking about, you know, like someone starting out, and you know, I'm not starting out, but we have to, one of the biggest things for me with being a creative artist is that reflection as well, and realizing that to sustain a long career within this kind of world and this industry, reflection and recognizing the changes that happen. So although I'm not formally diagnosed, I am absolutely seeing my world through the lens of ADHD. I've been reading a lot around it for work and for various other reasons, and it's like it's made sense of my world. So I definitely experienced sensory processing challenges, and in recent years that's really heightened. Sort of our time through COVID was quite challenging. I'm at a certain age where things are changing in, you know, in my body as well. You know, I'm quite disciplined with reflection. Reflective practice is something that I would say to every artist that you kind of need to do. You know, checking in on yourself, checking whether the work that you're creating is still bringing you joy. Yes, it absolutely has to pay the bills, you know, and it's very challenging being a creative artist of any form, actually. You know, funding is quite a challenge at the moment, but feeding your own creativity, having rest, all of those types of things, you only know that if you're checking in, if you're reflecting, if you're having those kind of pause moments. You talked about creating space for the children earlier, and that's what I want to do in Doodle Dance. But if I don't create space for myself to just look after and to nurture and make sure that my work is still feeding me, then, you know, what's the point? You know, and we won't be able to sustain it. You know, reaching out as a new artist is really important, but turning inwards is also, I think.
That's where the podcast came from, if I'm completely honest. This isn't something that's happened within 6 weeks. You know, although I did meet Sarah at the start of the year and we started thinking about the podcast, but I think this has been a long time coming. COVID hit. I had my little boy in that time. I then was made redundant. Those things that happened forced me to stop and reconnect with what I wanted to do. And I just started thinking about, you know, well, I still want to be in education. I still want to be creative. I still want to help other people, the children that I'm working with, be creative and tap into what they want, how they want to express themselves. And there was something that was really exciting about working in early years and primary that I wanted to see if that was a possibility. And it's been such a lovely experience being in those spaces. The children are so open to try lots of different things, and they've helped me reevaluate what's important: joy, play, curiosity, like all of those lovely things that I'd lost. I'd completely lost them. So that really resonates with me when you're talking about that. And I think why I'm so passionate about creativity being at the centre of education, because we need children to feel like they can express themselves and challenge things and question and be curious.
I think the tricky thing is that, so much of education is all this thing about preparation and for exams and then preparation for jobs. And actually for me, school should be about life, and work is part of life. But actually we want our young people to grow into adults who can support their own mental and physical health, who can reflect, who can have empathy. I mean, a big piece of kind of development for me and questioning at the moment, a lot of my work is around inquiry. I kind of get questions and I'm like, how does this work? And peacemaking is a big thing for me at the moment with what I'm seeing in the world. And we need more artists in this world, because many artists support peacemaking. It shares other people's viewpoints, it builds empathy, and we need nurture happening. The arts need to be within schools, not just so that we can build artistic careers as well, because our arts and culture contribute a lot to the economy of our country. But what's really interesting, Lucy, is your group joining the dots. That's what's not happening. This is what's
I know.
And this is the problem, is we've got a really disconnected kind of way of looking at things within our systems. The fact of the matter is our mental health and our physical health is absolutely impacted by the way that we are schooling children. The fact that we are expecting kids to sit rigidly at desks for so much of their time and learn things not by experiencing and doing, but by a worksheet, is just ridiculous. When there is an entire outdoor space out there, there are real people, there are real resources, there are real experiences. And it blows my mind, really, that we can't understand.
It seems so obvious. It seems so obvious, and yet people who are in charge of making policy just go, no.
The thing that does give me hope, and it's going back to the thing I was saying earlier, is that these cycles happen, like the cyclical nature of being human. The cycles of the seasons, and then there's the kind of seasons of our life, and then there's the seasons of the societal life that we look out onto. And change will come, and we have to make the most of it when it does. And at each point of change, we will bring more people into this kind of joyous journey of the arts. And what's really interesting as well is that some people who we may not have felt, and we may not have moved them on to want to take up study, but there may just be that tiny little thing that happened. And later in adulthood, that tiny little thing is the thing that when they're at their lowest, or when they have a job change, or whatever it is, that little thing that was planted all those years ago in that art session, or in that dance session, or that music making session, is the thing that's reignited. And they're like, hang on, I remember when that artist came into school and we did those massive murals, or I remember when that dance teacher came in and we learnt street dance, or I learnt this, or did whatever it is. And that will give them that encouragement. I think we have to just keep trying. That's the thing. We have to keep trying, and we have to keep providing those spaces.
I'm so glad you're going up to chat to Louise. I'm excited to hear what you're going to be doing up there. And
we're going to be finishing off some work that we started a little while ago. You know, we're both mums, so we have the juggle of motherhood, and it's what's been really wonderful over the last few years is I've really kind of a lot of my Arts Council funded project was all about looking at sustainability, and within that sustainability it was like, you know, really recognizing like myself as a whole, and like having to really, you know, recognize that I am an artist, but then that kind of mother moment has to punch through, and you know, that is who I am at that moment, and my art's going to wait for a moment and take this sort of turn taking. But being able to work with someone else who also needs that, but also who really gets it. And it's been really great working with Louise on all the work that I do with her. So that's going to be really nice. We're going to be out and about in woods and whispering a lot. So yeah, we love our outdoors work, which is really nice.
It sounds lovely. I mean, I'm that also resonates with me, this idea of prioritizing.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I'll go back to this word of discipline, unfortunately. I mean, I think it's very different. You know, I'm freelance. I don't really have many weeks that look the same. But I've had to create same. So I've had to sort of go, okay, you know, on this day, this is when I do these things. On this day, it's when I do my kind of marketing-y stuff on this day. And then because of my ADHD, I do that for about 2 weeks. And then it all goes out the window. No, it doesn't. No, I have lots of ways of sort of prioritizing. So I have my scatter. I don't do lists. Some days I do my scatters, so I can like pick, you know, I have a kind of scatter of things I need to do by the end of this period of time, and then I pick it on how I feel. So that for me is one of the things that helps.
I love that.
Yeah, and then I just ejected guilt and from like myself quite a few years ago, just really recognizing that like I am allowed to be creative, back to the fact that it's a fundamental right. So it's really handy.
We forget, don't we?
When you believe it's a right. Yeah, you do. But I think also for me is you know, my children are a massive inspiration. And like what you were saying, you know, when you work in early years, although mine are not early years and sort of young primary anymore, but they just are so inspiring as well. So I find that really helpful. I'm not at all leaving the world of primary dance, and I'm not at all early years. But I think also for me, like, you know, as my children have grown up, my creative sort of questioning has grown up alongside them. Because, you know, I'm seeing my eldest daughter who, you know, classmates were wanting to have dance GCSE and their school's not offering it. And I'm going, how can I offer that and have a look at, you know, those kind of opportunities. But yeah, it's a difficult thing, kind of separating. Sometimes I'm really good at it, separating those things, and turning that bit off and going, right, this is who I am and I'm with you now. It's weird actually with ADHD. I have super hyper focus. So when I'm mum, and if I tell myself this is my hyper focus now and I'm mum, like everything else goes. The downside of that is when you're on half term, like I am this week, I forget to check my emails. So I have to set lots of reminders in my phone as well. But I don't know. I think it's all about finding what works for yourself, you know, and the accountability, actually going right back to the beginning of our conversation, accountability of others, I think, you know, whether that's colleagues. The Primary Dance Network for me has been a really supportive tool for me with accountability. It gives me a rhythm to my week because we've got a bit of a gentle, you know, rhythm of posts. It makes me sit and go, right, I'm going to sit after I've done this post on Monday, making a move, and on Wednesday, Wellbeing Wednesday. It kind of gives me a nice anchor. So that's been quite good. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
You know, you're still championing creativity and the importance of it in schools with young children, and supporting artists as well, so that, you know, they can continue that legacy as well. I think that's so inspiring. I really do.
Thank you, Lucy.
I'm not just saying that. I really do. I'm so glad that I found you.
Oh, thank you.
Because it was such a random meeting, wasn't it? Really, online. So
well, that is. I mean, it's weird because being really honest, before COVID, because COVID, took me so online. It wasn't an area that I'd massively looked at as a tool, for developing the work. And I'd always been such a sort of face-to-face person, and I miss that, and that's where I'm at the moment. Like the needs for me as an artist is to find more local connection, which is I'm doing. But with Doodle, the other area that I'm sort of developing at the moment, the kind of next stages is how do I create something online that more people can access for training. I still think I would want there to be an element of like a face-to-face kind of day get together in 2 or 3 places around the country, but just to share that, because the words what you said there about legacy is, for me it's really, really important that I can support and ignite that support for new artists, because like we were saying, the infrastructure isn't there. So we as artists, the freelancers about, and myself, Louise and Claire and others, there's loads of other people out there who want to pass on and who want to share. We're really passionate. And in the schools there's been a reduction, but universities, sadly, we're seeing it as well. So it's really important that intellectual copyright, incredibly important, I know, but it's really important that we share and that we keep connecting. And, like with what you're doing, Lucy, with the podcast, just advocating for creativity and sharing that so it can just reach more and more people in that wilderness.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure.